So that's another one of those worst case scenarios, like I talked about high zone tolerance, and I previously talked about antibody dependent enhancement or vaccine enhanced infection or disease. There are these situations in normal viral biology and vaccinology that give experienced immunologists and vaccinologists a certain amount of concern and pause. And based on Merrick's disease, a lot and other examples, there are many virologists, and I'm one of them, that are concerned that the policy of universal vaccination at the time when we are having a very active outbreak that's global creates the risk that we will drive the immune response of the entire population towards a single endpoint, towards a common outcome in terms of antibody responses. And there's another very nice paper just out recently from Michael Diamond's laboratory at Washington University that shows that, in fact, we are getting remarkably consistent B-cell responses to the vaccination. So we're driving, there's an appearance that in the effective antibodies, there's a small number of epitopes that are protective in spike. And by only using spike as an antigen, we're driving all of our immune responses towards some common endpoints of immune response against certain domains in spike. And it can be shown that viruses are evolving during the course of this infection and the use of vaccine in this way to start to escape those selective pressure from antibodies against those certain domains. Spike is an interesting protein. It has a lot of sugars all over it and other things that are used to evade immune response already. So the concern is that by deploying vaccine broadly, the same basic vaccine, all of these genetic vaccines all employ spike as an antigen. We're driving the whole human race towards a common endpoint, and we're driving the virus that's infesting us to evolve to escape that common endpoint. And there is a risk that at some point in time, we may have basically a superbug evolve, which will now evade that immune response. Now, an example that your listenership may understand better is the idea of antibiotic resistance. When we deploy antibiotics unnecessarily and very widely, we know that we develop antibiotic-resistant bacteria. The same concept applies in vaccinology with viruses. So, what would happen should we have an emergent supervirus that is able to evade these spike vaccines? It is likely that it would cause disease in those that have only received vaccine as opposed to those that have had natural infection and have much broader immune responses. And it would place those that have primarily relied on vaccine for protection that are at risk, high risk of disease and death, in other words, the susceptible and elderly. Suddenly, their first line of defense falls away because the vaccines are no longer effective. And so the risk is, with this universal vaccination strategy, by driving the development of viruses that are able to evade the immune responses elicited by the vaccines, that we risk creation of virus strains that are able to evade that. And paradoxically, the people that it will put at risk are the very people that need the vaccine the most, which is our elders and those that have pre-existing medical conditions and morbid obesity. So the logic is, vaccinate those, reserve the vaccine for just them, and don't vaccinate the general population that are at extremely low risk, fraction of a percent.
And some more studies that came out recently that basically verify that, I suppose. Yeah.
There have been. There's been about 3 of them that have come out sequentially that are all consistent with this hypothesis. So that's the other leg of this stool that's kind of caused some growing concern about our current public policy in vaccination, is that we are seeing signs of the emergence of these vaccine escape mutants. And now there's a new strain popping up, I think, in South Africa that seems to be more resistant. And there are further evolution of the Delta strains that seem to be more resistant. So, like with all science, we can't prove that this is going to happen. This is forward-looking risk assessment. We're not there yet. I would prefer that we don't get there. I think probably we can all agree on that. I'm not saying that we're absolutely going to get there, but I'm saying that myself and many others believe that our current policy places us at increased risk to having this kind of unpleasant outcome and losing the benefits of the vaccines, which, as I've mentioned, I believe in. I believe we've saved a lot of lives. I believe those benefits are best administered to the people that are most susceptible to death and disease, and to reserve the vaccines for those people.